Welcome to Mondays with Maxwell. My name is Mark Cole. I'm the president and CEO of the John Maxwell Leadership Enterprise. I believe every one of you watching this right now is just like John. You welcome Mondays because you look forward to starting your week off looking for ways to value people. And since today is Monday, my friends, let's hear from the man of the hour. He is our leader, our friend, John C. Maxwell.
John Maxwell here, and welcome to another Monday with Maxwell. I'm so glad you're here in our Best Advice series. Before I give you the advice of my friend, Jack Nicklaus, which is going to be incredible in this lesson, Andrew Manzano, who has the studio here where we do all these recordings, and is just a great friend and a JMT member himself, always has given us advice. And so, and his is always humorous. And here's Andrew's advice to you today is stay away from drugs. They can cause short-term memory loss, or even worse, short-term memory loss. Oh, Andrew, you know what? Come up here just for a second. Quickly, Andrew. You got to put a face with all these fun quotes. This is Andrew Manzano, and give him a hand, coaches. This is our guy. And so when you get advice like that, this is always from Andrew. And then we upgrade to something a little bit better. So thank you, my friend, for doing so much added value to us on the John Maxwell team. In our Best Advice series, I want to talk about Jack Nicklaus now. Every year, Jack and Barbara have been very kind to our nonprofit organization, the John Maxwell Leadership Foundation, and that we have put on a golf event of which we get 12 golfers to give a wonderful donation to us, and Jack plays golf. We have 12 golfers, so he plays 6 holes with each foursome, and then he brings his 3 sons. And so Jackie, Steve, and Gary come out, and they play with the foursome the whole time. And we have lunch with him. We play golf at the Bear Club, and then we go to his house for a magical dinner. We go into his office and see all of the trophies he's won, and he tells us these incredible stories. And we go into his trophy room. He's a big hunter and a fisherman, and it's an unforgettable evening. And so I was with Jack recently. By the way, if you would be interested in attending and helping us at Equip with a donation, it's a healthy donation, trust me. But if you'd be interested in playing golf with Jack, just let us know, and we'll put you on the list, okay? But I was with him, and I said, Jack, I'm doing a Best Advice series podcast, and I said, I would like for you to think about what the best advice is that you would like to pass on. And so that evening, while people were gathering at his house, Jack and I were having just a personal conversation. And he said, John, I've been thinking all day about the best advice. And he said, I have 2 things that I want to share. And I said, okay, well, shoot it. And I'm passing on to you now Jack's best advice to you. And the first one, he said, I've always tried to follow the golden rule. Now, the golden rule is, treat others as you would like to be treated. And I looked at him and I said, hey, I like this, the golden bear. That's kind of his nickname. The golden bear says the best advice is the golden rule. Treat others like you would like to be treated. I began to learn the power of the golden rule when Time Warner asked me back in 2001 when corporate scandals were happening and there was a lot of distrust, a lot of manipulation. They called me to New York City and said, we want you to write a book on business ethics. And I said, well, I can't do that. And they said, why? I said, because there's no such thing as business ethics. There's just ethics. And then he said, well, can you write a book on ethics? And I said, well, I don't know. I'm not really sure I can, because in a culture that has no truth or no absolutes, I mean, who determines what is ethical? So he said, well, try it. And so I got my research team together, and we thought about it, and we came up with a good idea, and it worked. I wrote a book called Business Ethics 101, and it was all about the golden rule. And what I learned out of that, this was life-changing. The light came on in my life because it was out of that I realized the power and the positive effect that good values have on people. So when Jack Nicklaus at his home said, John, I try to follow the golden rule. That's the best advice I can give, which is great advice. I just thought about a book that Alan Wolfe wrote called Moral Freedom. And this was written back in 2001, right during the corporate scandals. And basically, he said that moral freedom is the belief that life is best when each individual finds his or her own morality. In other words, there's not a kind of a stated set morality. You just kind of go out and say what's moral for me and what's moral to me. Now, when I read that book and I thought about the trouble that we were in, the corporate scandals, etc., and I thought about Jack Nicklaus's golden rule, treat others as you'd like to be treated, I began to think of what I would call moral freedom assumptions. And they're as follows. If everybody does their own thing, then the assumption is that everything will work out okay for everybody. And if everybody pursues their own economic self-interest, then the economy will thrive for everyone. And if everybody chooses their own family style, then the children will prosper. And we kind of basically said, you just can kind of basically choose your own morality. And the result of that is, stay with me now, the result of choosing your own moral code is that you end up focusing on yourself instead of focusing on others. In other words, you begin to have a selfish perspective of life. What's best for me? What feels good for me? Not what is best for others. Not what is good for others. It's certainly the antithesis of the golden rule. And moral freedom, for me, equals minimum freedom for you. And maximum value for me really means minimum value for you. And you can see this is exactly opposite of what Jack was talking to me in his house that day about the golden rule. And so therefore, I think that's when what I call the Great Divide began. And the Great Divide was personal freedom has become the greatest value of a person's life. And when that happens, all of a sudden, it's not about you anymore. It's all about me and my rights. The result, the trust factor begins to decline. And trust determines behavior. You see, social trust is the confidence that you will do what you ought to do. It's the confidence that I will do what I ought to do. And social trust begins to fail when we do what we want to do, not what we ought to do. And where does the ought come in? Where's the core of social trust? It's in values. It's in the golden rule. Treat others. Think of others. Treat others as you would like to be treated. So when I wrote this book on the golden rule, I realized it was accepted by most cultures and religions in the world. It was easy to understand. It was certainly bigger than my own personal situation. It always valued people, and it created trust. Now, let me just. I've got to camp here for a moment because I wrote a book called Change Your World, and the whole thesis of Change Your World is that when people learn good values and they live good values, they just become more valuable. They become more valuable to themselves. They become more valuable to their family. They become more valuable to their neighbors, to their community. And so the book the core again is on values. And when Jack gave that advice of following the golden rule, what he was basically saying is, get a set of values that considers other people, not just your way, but has a bigger perspective, has a more mature perspective in it. In my book, Change Your World, I talk about the fact that an empty bag just doesn't stand up straight. It doesn't. You put an empty bag out in your yard, there doesn't even have to be a breeze blowing. I mean, you look back out there in 5 minutes, that empty bag, it's already fallen over. And if there is a gentle breeze that comes, the empty bag is gone. Why? It has no substance on the inside. And what happens is good values develop our core. And when we become better on the inside, we become better on the outside. When we become bigger on the inside, we become bigger on the outside. It all begins on the inside. And when Jack gave us that advice of following the golden rule, I just thought, Jack, you have a core. You have a core that makes you stand up straight. By the way, what we've discovered is, when you think of kids and social media, a lot of social media is wanting validation from somebody kind of almost ridiculously, people you don't even know. You're wanting to kind of okay you and say you're okay and give you a thumbs up. And what we've discovered is that the more good values I have on the inside, the less validation I need from the outside. When I have good values inside of me, I don't really need a lot of validation from other people. And it's the opposite is also true. The less values I have on the inside, the more validation I seek on the outside. So this is incredible advice given to us by Jack. And so thank you. It's just beautiful. It's advice about values, the golden rule, which should be the heart and the core of our life. And then Jack, he said, but there's something else I tell young golfers, and I leaned into him especially for this because, he is the greatest golfer ever. And he said, but when I'm around young golfers, there's something I always want to make sure that they grab hold of and they learn, because he said it'll really help them. And I said, well, Jack, what was it? And he gave me this advice. He said, I tell young golfers, and he's telling all of us now because I'm passing on to you what he said to me, understand yourself. And so I said, well, let's talk about it. And he said, well, John, let's talk about the game of golf. He said, the game of golf management begins by managing yourself. And you can't manage yourself until you understand yourself. And so he said, when I share with golfers that they need to understand themselves, what I'm saying is, don't let anybody put their game on you. So if you're playing with a long hitter, don't use more club or maybe more power in your swing to kind of keep up with who they are and what they're doing. He said, no. He said, you have to understand yourself, and that means you have to be yourself. And he said the first step of becoming a better golfer is to become a better you. And I thought, boy, that makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? Just kind of understand yourself, and if you can understand yourself, you can understand your golf game. If you can understand yourself, it helps you understand your family relationships. It helps you understand your business relationships. And then he said something else. He said, understanding yourself not only means be yourself or kind of like be comfortable in your own skin. He said, accept yourself. Carl Rogers said that when I accept myself just as I am, then I can change. I love that. Really, change becomes impossible in my life until I can accept myself for who I am, my strengths, my weaknesses, the good side, the bad side, the ups, the downs, that whole process. So I was reading the other day, thinking about this lesson I wanted to give to you and the advice from Jack. I was reading the other day that there's a difference between knowing and understanding. In other words, you can know a lot about something and not really understand it at all. I can remember when I had an opportunity to meet John Wooden and an opportunity for him to mentor me. I read all of his books before I got to him. I've now read all of his books, but I had a list of 5 legal pages of questions I wanted to ask him. And so I really knew a lot about John Wooden. In fact, if you had been on the plane when I was going out to Los Angeles to meet him for the first time, I could have sat beside you and I could explain John Wooden really, really well. But I hadn't experienced John Wooden. That didn't happen until I spent a day with him. And all of a sudden now I not only knew what he taught, but I began to understand who he was. And I think understanding myself, I wrote this down kind of to wrap up our time together. Understanding myself means that I'm comfortable in my skin. And that means that I know who I am. If I know who I am, that gives me identity. If I accept who I am, it gives me security. If I enjoy who I am, it gives me fulfillment. If I improve who I am, it gives me growth. And if I share who I am, it gives me a connection with other people. And so I think of Jack in our conversation that day and follow the golden rule, treat others as you want to be treated, and understand yourself. Just kind of know your strengths, know your weaknesses, and play within that which makes you feel comfortable, which makes you feel good and which makes you feel right. Well, we wrapped up our day with Jack at his house, and it was kind of life-changing. In fact, when we finished, he signed master's flags to all of our wonderful donors, and as another way of just saying thank you to them. And as we all left, I kind of said to myself, it's really good to be in the presence of people like Jack and Barbara Nicklaus, just real good people. And the advice he gave me, follow the golden rule and understand yourself, that's Jack. That's what's made him so good, so effective. And I think that advice will help you, and I sure know it's helping me. Thanks for being with me today on Monday with Maxwell. Again, thank you for allowing me to share best advice with you. And now I have another one of our John Maxwell team coaches, Mike McCathern, with me. He's from North Carolina. He is on our PAC group, which is an advisory council group of John Maxwell team, and he helps our coaches do masterminding. And yes. I'm so glad you're here, Mike.
It's an honor to be here, John.
Thanks for joining us. We're delighted you're on the team. So talk to me about before you joined the John Maxwell team and after you joined, and what the difference was.
Oh, man. Such a great question. Before I joined the John Maxwell team, we talk about, having a lid. Not only that, John, how do you add value to people? I thought I knew what adding value was because I've always been pouring into people at the level I knew how.
Sure.
Right? Helping with churches, helping leaders. But when I joined the John Maxwell team, it was on a different level because I understand what leadership was. I understood what adding value to people and make a significant difference was, John, because I was able to take them to a different level. Now that I had coaches pouring into me, like nobody's business.
I love that.
It was unreal.
So they're pouring into you, and then you know exactly how to pour into others. It's kind of like you cannot give what you do not have. So they're pouring into you, Mike, and you're just turning around and going back into your community and you're pouring into people. Is that the way it works?
That's the way it works, John. And I can remember one story in particular. I got a young man at the Salvation Army, and he was stuck. He didn't understand, Mike, how do I get to the next level? And if he would have asked me that a different way, I probably would have tried to tell him how I get there.
Yes.
But you know what? It's not about telling. The answer is already within them. We just have to guide them, John.
I love that.
I was able to sit with him and help him guide him to the next level. Not only did he come from homelessness, John, he's a now productive citizen of society. He's doing exceptionally well, and I still talk to him to this day.
Isn't that beautiful, Mike? And that's why we do, as John Maxwell team coaches, what we do. I just love this. So take just a moment now and share with the people that are watching us why you think they should become a John Maxwell team member.
Absolutely. For anybody just thinking about joining a John Maxwell team, I know what it was like for me before I joined a John Maxwell team. And it would take not only in your personal life, whether you're an entrepreneur, you're a CEO of a company, you're an employee of a company, or you start your own business, joining a John Maxwell team would take you to a different level. And I am a product of the product. If I can do it, you can do it. Yeah.
Oh, Mike, thank you so much. We sure would love to have you join. Thanks so much for being with us today.
So now we see there is good advice and Andrew advice. Let's call that unadvice. I hope you've enjoyed today's Monday with Maxwell lessons. What's some good advice or some unadvice you've received? Let us know in the comments. And what can we say about our John Maxwell team members? Every day, they look for ways to lead in and live out Maxwell leadership principles and philosophies. We're so grateful for the John Maxwell team. Each week, we'll feature a member or mentor from our team who will share their story and their journey with you. Why? Because we want you to see the real stories of difference makers, of value multipliers, and of possibilists. If you want to learn how you too can join John's team of difference makers, go to mondayswithmaxwell.com. Let me say that again. It's Mondays, plural, mondayswithmaxwell.com. Let us know how you saw Mondays with Maxwell and how you want to make a difference. Thank you again for watching today. We'll see you next week for another episode of Mondays with Maxwell.